Hey everybody, Jane here. I read Christine by Stephen King and then I watched John Carpenter's, I believe 1980s-ish version of the movie, and I want to talk about it.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft spoken.
I really enjoyed Christine the book, and I was a little bit let down by the movie, which I know is often the case. I don't think this was a bad movie. I think this movie needed to be way longer than it was. I think it bit off more than it could chew. And I think that it could have been so great if people had taken a little more time to figure out either how to incorporate more story from the King novel into it or to give it its own unique story, which I think they tried and I don't necessarily thought they succeeded. So this is about Archie Cunningham, who is driving home one day from his job with his friend Dennis and sees a car for sale. And in the movie, it's being sold by a guy whose brother has just passed away. In the book, it is being sold by the guy who owned it. He needs to get rid of the car. The car is not in great shape. He's had the car for a long time. His health is failing. He's not allowed to drive anymore. And even though he absolutely loves this car, it is time. So that's the first big change, is who sells the car. In the movie, LeBay being the owner is not super important, but in the book it is very important. It's kind of the crux of the whole book. So Arnie gets this car. He has a huge fight with his parents because his parents are, you shouldn't have spent your money on a car. You should be saving up for college. And also, this car looks like a hunk of junk and you're not storing it at the house. And so he goes and finds this garage that he can store it at. And the garage owner is like, hey, I will let you store it here, but you have to do some errands for me that are probably a bit criminal. And so Arnie is starting to restore the car, and the car starts to do some very alarming things. All right, so in the movie, we are never given a good explanation for why the car is the way it is. In the book, though, LeBay dies and his ghost is very involved in everything that happens with the car. The ghost seems to be possessing Arnie, and we are kind of given the impression that LeBay is just a very bad, evil, negative person, and that horrible negativity and stuff is the reason that the car is evil or is possessed or is acting the way it is. In the movie, we see the car on the assembly line. It attacks. It attacks one of the people who is building it for no good reason, and this car is just evil for no good reason. And as a person who struggles with horror, I love the concept of horror, but I need some plot, I need some reasons. I freaking hated that in the movie. The book, I was okay with. I thought that was a reasonable explanation. Like, I wanted a little bit more from it, but at least LeBay is evil and he owned the car, and he owned the car for a long time, and all of his evilness and anger and hatred went into the car. It's fine. I can deal with that. So then Arnie starts to date this girl, and she is a girl that everybody seems to want. And the movie kind of skips over a lot of their dating stuff. We don't really know how they got together, what they see in each other, anything like that. And I thought it was very rushed. We rush straight to something that is very late in the book, which is Christine in the car trying to kill Chris, or the girl. I don't remember what her name is. I don't think it's Chris. Girlfriend's name is Lee. which makes sense. I ear read it, so I did not maintain what the girl's name was. So anyway, the girlfriend, Lee. Christine the car tries to kill the girlfriend, Lee. And in the movie, we have no real context for that. I do believe at some point Dennis goes and talks to the brother and finds out that the LeBay car had tried to kill LeBay's daughter. And in the movie, or in the book, Dennis already has this information that LeBay's car had choked, or his little girl had choked and died in the car, and then his wife had committed suicide in the car. So Dennis already has that information in the book. Dennis is the best friend who plays a really big role in the book and a little bit less of a role in the movie. But in the book, Dennis already knows this happened, so when the car tries to kill Lee, we already know that this is a problem and very terrible, and Dennis is aware that this is an issue as well, and that the car is indeed trying to kill Lee, whereas Arnie is just like, no, you just choked on your food and it's fine. And that happens really, really late in the book, but in the movie, it happens pretty early. The pacing in this movie is really, really busy. Like, it's like, oh, we've never like seen Arnie and Lee out together or hardly at all. And then all of a sudden she's choking in his car. He's not rescuing her. And she's all like, we're not dating anymore because I don't want to ride in your car. And in the book, it makes a lot more sense. It's a lot smoother. And you kind of build up the dread for this car much better. Also in the movie, we see that the car can fix itself. In the book, that takes us a while to get there, and Arnie has to do certain things to help the car fix itself. It doesn't just sit there and fix itself all the time. Like, he has to push it forward and the odometer goes backwards, and that is how it fixes itself. So yeah, I felt like overall they took the concepts in Christine and then the movie just showed us some blips without much context. And we're like, here, Lee's choking and is like, now we're not dating anymore, Arnie, or I'm not driving in your car. And then Arnie's car gets smashed up by some bad guys. And, Lee is like, oh, well, that's crazy. And they kind of break up. Whereas, like, in the book, we have a whole thing of them dating and spending time together. And yes, she gets jealous, or she doesn't like Christine. She feels like Christine doesn't like her. She's a little weirded out. At first, she's like, oh, it's cool, I'm hanging in the car, but he loves the car more than me. And there's some actual like jealousy. And then, the car attacks Lee, and then, we have her being like, I'm not riding the car anymore, and then him having his car get smashed, and the car attacking the people that smashed it. And it just, I don't know, dude. I just felt like this could have been so cool, but it didn't want to explain anything. So it just runs us all through it. So there's very little character development. In the book, we also see that LeBay is working on Arnie. So Arnie is starting to really pick up traits from LeBay. And he does that in the movie too, but we didn't really get an explanation for that. And we've not met LeBay. We've met LeBay's brother, who in the movie they kind of turn into one character, because the brother has all the characteristics of LeBay. He has a back brace and he says the same words as LeBay does. And in the book, LeBay is the one that sold the car, and we see Arnie slowly taking the traits of LeBay on. And I don't think that made any sense in the movie. There were some like clips that they didn't use that was like Arnie's handwriting is suddenly not Arnie's and it's LeBay's. But that makes no sense and no context in the movie, even though it makes perfect sense in the book. That Arnie is slowly, the changes we see in Arnie are because he's being possessed by LeBay, and that possession connection is somehow involved in the car. Now, as far as ending, I thought the ending was very different in both of these two. Like, a lot of things that happen in this are from the book, but they just don't make a lot of sense and they're out of context and are poorly paced. But the ending is completely different. So, in the ending of the movie, you have Arnie in Christine, and you have him at the garage that he's keeping his car at, and you have Lee and Dennis trying to stop the car. And you have Christine who like runs into the office and throws Arnie out of the car and he dies from the impact. And then Lee and Dennis go destroy the car. So in the book, that's not at all what happens. So Lee and Dennis are going to the garage to destroy the car. That part's correct. But Arnie is with his mom looking at colleges. Now, we do get the impression that LeBay's ghost can only possess either one or the other. So the ghost does possess Arnie while they're looking at colleges, and Arnie and his mom die in a car accident. But Arnie's not anywhere near the scene when Dennis and Lee take out Christine. So I thought that was an interesting choice to make Arnie attack his best friend and the woman he loves in this car, especially when we haven't gotten a lot of understanding of the fact that LeBay is possessing Arnie and Christine. We have scenes where LeBay in the book is driving the car as it's attacking people. And sometimes it's not run at all. Like sometimes there's nobody in the seat, which is what we see in here. But you just don't get any feel for what is really going on or the context or the story in the movie. And I really wish we had. And I feel like if they'd have taken just a few more minutes of screen time, they could have really shown us why the car is acting the way the car is acting. They could have introduced us to LeBay, and they could have changed the pacing on Lee and Arnie's relationship to make it make more sense. I think the movie, other than the reason for stuff, I thought plot-wise, it was pretty close to the book, although it left out a ton of stuff. Like, it didn't change major details too much, but it very much just cherry-picked a few scenes and threw them in the movie and didn't give a lot of context for them. And I think that was the biggest failure of the movie, is that it had good ideas and it was showing things that were really loyal to the book, and I liked that. But then at the end of the day, it didn't give me the context for it within the movie. And so you have something that is kind of jumbled. But if you've read the book, you have the context. And so I knew what was going on. And I really liked the book, Christine. I highly recommend reading it if you like King. I thought it was a great book. I really enjoyed it. And just the movie, I was kind of like, okay, I understand what's happening, but I don't know if I'd understand this if I read it or watched the movie outside the context of having read the book. So it didn't make too many major changes, but then the things that it did show, it didn't show well, if that makes sense. Because like Chris choking, that it's a little different context in the book than the movie, but I mean, it happened. Most of the scenes happen in some capacity or another. They're just changed a good bit, and there's a lot that's lacking. So again, it was like the book is very long and they took just a few scenes and not a lot of explanation, and then did them maybe not as well as they could have in the movie. So I don't think this is a great adaptation. I do think it is fairly, scene-wise, it has a lot of the same scenes as the book. I don't think they completely like took everything and changed everything. I think they took a handful of scenes from the book that were visually really cool, didn't give us much content, and we're like, here's a movie about a car that kills people for no good reason. I don't necessarily think the movie was great as a standalone because there's so much context missing. I didn't think it was very enjoyable as a standalone because I was like, well, We didn't get to see the buildup. We didn't get any explanations. I don't understand why this is happening, except that I've read the book and I do understand. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the book versus movie. Also, in the book, Christine kills the father. Arnie's parents really aren't mentioned near the end of the book. We don't like see them. They're not there at Arnie's funeral, which they wouldn't be. But they're also not mentioned because at the end of the movie, they're like crushing Christine down. And there's no context of, why is it Dennis and Lee? Arnie's parents were killed in the book, but we're not told that they were killed in the movie. Arnie is dead, which we know, but it just, there was a lot of context that, again, was just left out. But they were not shown as being dead. And I believe, too, that in the book, Christine kills the cop that's investigating the murders of the vandals. And in the movie, I don't think she did. So, yeah. And again, I realize that we can't have time in a movie for every single scene in a book. But I hate when the context is super changed and or the only things that are shown are things that are really out of context. Also, I think Arnie was a bigger jerk in the movie than in the book. In the book, we have the POV of Dennis a lot of the time telling the story, and like he sees the change in Arnie, but like there's a scene in both the movie and the book where Arnie comes and visits him while he's at the hospital after Dennis has had injuries from a football game. And I do believe in the book, Dennis said like it was a great time with Arnie. It was close to how they used to be when they were really good friends. Like Arnie comes for Thanksgiving and is really nice and they're chilling. And in the movie, it's really antagonistic. Like Arnie shows up and he's being a jerk to Dennis, and Dennis is like, whoa. And then there was deleted scenes too that we watched, and those were also like Arnie being awful to Dennis. And yeah, I think I didn't like that. I thought that, Arnie changed so much in the movie without reason. And in the book, you really see Arnie struggling to fight LeBay and the possession. And you have moments where he's being a jerk, but he was not nearly as much of a jerk in the book as he is in the movie. And the movie, there's no explanation or concept for it. So, all right, those were kind of my thoughts on book versus movie for Christine. Have you read and watched? And if so, what were your thoughts? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Did you like one better than the other? Also, what are good Stephen King adaptations I should be watching? I've seen Misery, I've seen Green Mile, Shawshank, 1922, which I thought was excellent. Good Marriage I started and couldn't finish. Secret Window. I think those are the main ones. Oh, Pet Sematary. So let me know what adaptations are really good and that I would probably enjoy. Oh, and The Shining I saw. That was good too. Well, the book was good. The movie, didn't like The Shining. But anyway, let me know what good adaptations of King's work you've seen and what you would recommend. I am going to continue to read King. I don't know what my next read's going to be, but I didn't think I liked King. And I still don't know. There's so much that King does that I hate, but then there's just enough that I like that I kind of want to keep reading. So it's an interesting feeling I have about King. Anyway, if you don't know what else to say, just put a little car emoji in the comments, to feed the YouTube algorithm gods. This has been Jane. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.